During the planning of the interstate system, there were a lot of things that went into whether or not a state gets its fair share of interstate routes. First, obviously, you need to have a major city within your state lines. The interstate system was designed in a way that connected every major city to each other. So if you had an important metropolitan area, that was the best way to be considered. Secondly, you also had to be in a central location that wasn't out of the way. There are a lot of states that have more interstate routes just by being in the right spot between two larger cities, especially in the central part of the country. And there are a lot of other reasons that go into it, like political influence or historical importance. But basically it all works in the opposite way if you don't have these things, which makes for less interstates within your state. So today we're going to find out which state has been cheated by the country the most and has the least interstate highways. Before that though, I want to quickly ask if you would please consider subscribing to the channel. We make geography content like this every week, so if that's the kind of thing you enjoy watching on YouTube, I recommend you subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a lot. Thank you. So to find the state with the least interstate highways, you have to start by looking at the total mileage by state. Obviously the biggest states like Texas or California lead in that category, and with places like Illinois being especially high for separate reasons. Now if you don't know much about the topic, the first place your mind would go to is somewhere like Wyoming, the least populated state in the country. Well, Wyoming actually has the most interstate mileage proportionate to its population, at 913 miles. This comes from it being above the main part of the Rocky Mountains, meaning I-80 goes through the southern part of the state, with I-25 then going up through the eastern part of the state, and I-90 meeting in the northeast part of the state. Then you add in I-180 in Cheyenne, and you have 4 interstate highways. Even somewhere like North Dakota, the least visited state in the lower 48, still has 571 miles of interstates throughout the state. But now, if we get into the right answers here, we find there are a lot of different ways this could go. First off, there's the easiest answer, Alaska. So looking at a map, Alaska has no interstates, and only one real freeway in the state. So that would be getting it out of the way pretty easily then. But in actuality, Alaska has 4 unsigned interstates that work differently from the rest of the system. They were created for funding purposes, so it really depends what you consider to be a part of the interstate system. I have a full video on this, but I think we kind of have to consider these to be a part of the interstate system, even if they aren't traditional freeways for the bulk of their mileage. Because of this, Alaska has 4 active routes with 1,082 miles of roadway, putting it well above a lot of other states, so I wouldn't put it as our answer to this question. Next, we can look at the states with the least number of interstate highways, and there are several answers for this one. Basically, any state with 3 interstates can be considered here, and there are 4 different states that can be talked about. So first we have one that you might expect, which is Rhode Island. So Rhode Island has just 68 miles of interstate highways, with just 3 total. The main interstate in the state is I-95, which goes through the Providence metropolitan area. I-95 absolutely could have bypassed the state entirely, and even though they probably would have ended up getting a major interstate in one way or another, they're lucky they have probably the most iconic interstate going through the state to save them. They also have 2 spur routes, with I-195 going out from 95 in the downtown towards Fall River, and I-295 working as an outer loop to bypass the Providence Metro. Next, there's New Mexico, which actually just gets unlucky here. See, New Mexico is one of the only states with no interstate spur routes, due to how the system developed in the state. This means even though they have almost exactly 1,000 miles of interstate highways, they're still included on the list. The state has 2 main interstates, with I-40 running east-west right down the middle, and I-25 running north-south right down the middle. The third route is I-10, which passes through for a short period in the southern part of the state. Now, New Mexico has Albuquerque, which definitely could have a spur route, and honestly the lack of these routes is more the state's fault than anything else, so it doesn't feel like they were cheated out of anything. The next state would be North Dakota, which has a valid claim here. So the state does have 571 miles of interstate routes, but that basically all comes from 2 routes, with I-94 going east-west straight through the state, passing through Fargo and Bismarck. As well as that, right along the eastern border we find I-29, which is a fairly empty 220 miles of interstate that goes along the Red River. Now, the third highway is I-194 in the Bismarck Metro. This is one of the shortest interstates in the entire country at 1.5 miles long, with half of the route being unsigned going into the downtown. So there isn't really a lot going on here, and even though it is technically an interstate, you can barely even call it that. Now finally, after going through the other options, It brings us to the state that I would give the title of least interstates in the country, and that's Delaware. So let's start off with its 3 interstate highways, because not only is it tied in that category, but it also has more going on. So the only major one we have is I-95, which runs through the Wilmington metropolitan area on the very north side of the state for 22 miles. Other than that, all we have are 2 spur routes. One being I-495, which goes along the waterfront through Wilmington to help spread out the traffic a bit through the city. And the only other one is I-295, which comes out at a 3-way interchange with I-95 and 295, going over the Delaware River and turning into the New Jersey Turnpike, as well as continuing as I-295 in New Jersey. So why does this make Delaware special? Well, the state has just 40 miles of interstate highway. The population of the state is 1 million. Meaning there's 1 mile of interstate for every 25,000 residents. Now, if that sounds reasonable, it doesn't once you put it up against places like Illinois, with 1 mile per 5,700 residents, or even California at 1 mile per 15,800 residents. Now, not only is Delaware at the bottom of the list for interstate miles per residence, but it also only has 3 routes, making it our overall winner in my opinion. Now, there have been talks of another interstate route titled I-101 that would come out from I-95 in Wilmington and go down through the state, likely following US 13 through Dover into Maryland to places like Salisbury before finally meeting into Hampton Roads and maybe going back into I-95 somewhere in North Carolina. This would bypass cities like Richmond, DC, and Baltimore for travelers up the East Coast. Now, this is not likely to happen, but it would flip the script on Delaware and suddenly make it one of the states with an above average amount of interstate highway mileage. If it were to happen though, it wouldn't be within the next 20 years, with there being no real approved plans to make it happen. So for now, Delaware is continuing to grow, and is in my opinion the answer to this question. Depending on who you are, there can be multiple answers for this question. There are so many stories as to why the interstate highways are where they are. But I hope this video gave you some new knowledge about the system. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Sturfles, Rosebud4, KMS162, Jeremy Jarvis, Haystack, Boss King Inc., Blang, Christopher DeAngelis, JL, Darkbird, Elijah Pass, Big Pasty, Jeremy Crone, Wolfling73, Snyder Swine, Florida Jake, Stormy Knight, Nikita Martinov, Benjamin Whiting, Ryan Devon, Hazev the Wolf, Dominic Psyche, and Bryson. I appreciate you all so much. You really help out the channel. All of this money is literally just going straight into my savings. So you're helping me out as a person a ton, and I really appreciate it. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below, as well as the join button. All of this is just an extra way to help support me. It's really simple. You just give some extra money to the channel, and I can promise you none of it is being used for bad causes. It's all just helping me and my future. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.